Hello everybody and welcome to Woopercast. This is episode 31 for the 2nd of February 2017. As always, I am your host, Joe Yates. So, new sets coming out. We've been talking an awful lot about the new decks that are coming out with it and the new cards to play around with, but I have not really had a look at the current decks in the format and seen how they change with the new cards coming in. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to go through a bunch of the current top tier archetypes and see what kind of changes should be made to those, if any. There's only a couple of decks that I don't mention because I don't see any potential changes for them, but, you know, if you guys feel like I've missed out on something, of course, feel free to leave a comment about it below. Also, I want to start off as well with a very quick apology to our SoundCloud listeners. I know recent episodes have not been going up on SoundCloud or TuneIn or Stitcher or any of those things apart from YouTube. I will fix this. It should be fixed by the time you hear this, so if you've refreshed your feed and saw like 3 episodes, now you know why. So anyway, yeah, let's get straight into it. So, how I'm going to be doing this is I'm going to be taking this deck by deck. I'm just going to name a deck and name all the cards I think that can fit into it from the new set or how I think it's going to change to shape up to a new meta. And yeah, we're going to go from there. So first of all, we have to talk about dark decks. They're kind of always good and they're kind of always changing. So yeah, let's talk about those. This is going to encompass like Yveltal, Darkrai, really any kind of major dark archetype, because there's always one in the format. At the moment, of course, it's Turbo Darkrai with, you know, Max Elixirs, EXP share, and Baby Yveltal's knocking around. So, what's going to be put in these come the new set? A lot of people talking about Umbreon GX. I think this is definitely worth discussion, but I would love to see this, like, properly in action. And multiple different variants of it against multiple different decks. The point is, I would like to see Umbreon putting in work against, like, a large amount of decks across the field. I'm sort of skeptical about it for now, because I think 9330 is a great attack, or at least it was great in like 2013. It's just, is it still good enough to keep up? The biggest thing for me about Umbreon is the GX attack. I know a lot of people say it's a bad one. I think it's so good. 2 energy off your opponent's board is huge. You're setting them back like a massive amount. That's like a really solid GX attack, especially for Yveltal, which, I mean, now that it's not seeing play at the moment, but back when it was, of course, it was running things like Team Flare Grunt and 2 Enhanced Hammer. This is that, like, in an attack, which is pretty solid. I feel like it's hard to know what part of Umbreon you want to focus on, because you got Strafe, the attack for 30 damage, and you switch it to the bench. Do you throw in, like, stuff like Wobbuffet or things with, like, or Pyukumuku or something, just to send it up so it can take a hit while you strafe back to the bench? Do you build around that part of it? Do you build around the 90-30 snipe damage and start putting in higher counts of Fright Knight Yveltals to keep picking things off the bench and stuff like that? It's kind of like, it feels like there's a bunch of different ways that you can go down with it. And I would like to see a much better Yveltal player than me come up with a better idea for this thing. So I've seen a few lists, I've seen a few articles. I just want to see it in action at a proper full-scale tournament. I'm just a bit skeptical about it, is all. It seems like a nice card. It seems like a powerful enough card. But is it actually going to help out with the deck? Like, current players of Turbo Darkrai, you don't need an Umbreon GX in there, like, at all. It's fine as it is. You definitely wouldn't throw one in. At least, I wouldn't want to, you know, mess with that list's ridiculous consistency by sort of adding an Umbreon to it. So, I don't know. It's going to have to be one that you play around with yourselves. The Eevee, of course, does make it super, like, viable. Like, in terms of consistency, all you need is the Eevee out and a manual attachment. And that's a lot more... It makes it a lot easier to recommend as a result. And it probably makes it more viable to run, like, a 1-1 line as well. But, I don't know. I'd like to see it in action is all. So, what else we got for dark stuff? Yeah. Tauros is also something that people have been theorizing a bit. I think it's kind of cool. Having played against Tauros a bit in testing now, it is a little intimidating when you can't one-shot it. Even if they're just sort of sitting there and chipping you for 60, you know, that can be finishing off things that have been pre-damaged with Dark Pulse or Evil Ball or Y Cyclone. Well, maybe not Y Cyclone, won't be finishing that off. But, you know, it can start on things. You know, Yveltal's largely two-shotting things anyway, and 60 damage is usually enough to pick things off. Also, why Fright Knight was so good for so long. And, you know, still is. But it is kind of intimidating to come up against when you see a Tauros with 220 HP with a Fury Belt. And you're like, well, I can't kill this in one hit, so I'm going to die next turn. Like, you have to sacrifice something yourself to get rid of it. I think in the mirror as well, this could be really good because, like, as an Yveltal or as a Darkrai staring down that Tauros, that's going to be terrifying because there's no way they're getting that one hit KO, especially in the early game. Just sticking that there and holding a DCE in hand ready to retaliate is going to be really, really handy for you. That's a free KO right off the bat, and that can absolutely swing something in your favor. So I think it's good, and I don't think you need it as a Ninja Boy target. I think it could be viable in the list even without Ninja Boy. I'm not sure how many copies. I think even just one will be fine. It's also nice just to have something with a different weakness and with a different, in Yveltal's case. And, you're not hitting for resistance either. It could be good against Rainbow Road for that reason, if you can cap their damage enough. I don't think Yveltal should struggle with Rainbow Road that much anyway, but those are my thoughts anyway. Skarmory is the other one I want to see in this. I'm going to mention Skarmory for a couple of decks here, because I want to see people play it. I just don't think it's the meta for it right now. We're not seeing enough things that rely on special energy at the moment. If we ever did, and it was ever like a super special energy heavy meta, but not even necessarily special energy heavy, because, like, let's imagine, like, Vespiquen. Like, using a Skarmory against Vespiquen is going to be terrible. Because all you've done, it's been, like, worse than a promo Jirachi at that point. Because you're only going to get rid of, like, one. There's very rarely will you get rid of more than that. So you'd be looking at things like, really, this thing to me just screams it's a Giratina counter. So I think I think it's just an option for Yveltal in the format at, like, all times. So if a deck ever does come out that has a lot of special energy on the board at the one time, this is such an easy tech to throw in to help you deal with that. So I don't know. I think it's one to bear in mind. It's definitely not one just to chuck in the deck right now, but it would very easily fit into it, and I really like the potential this card has. It's like, that's such a powerful attack, getting rid of every special energy on the board. Like, that's insane. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Yveltal and Darkrai. I mean, I think largely Darkrai in particular is going to be unchanged out of the two. I think Yveltal definitely has to adapt, obviously, to keep up. We've seen that it's lost its place as the dominant deck in the meta. So we know that it has to change to keep up. Does this set give it enough to change? I think it's going to struggle a little more with the higher HP Pokemon that we have. I think maybe when Choice Band comes out, we might see that feature in some Yveltal lists to help them take KOs against some of these. Like some major traffic problem outside my house, sorry about that. To see them sort of try and take KOs against these bigger HP Pokemon, like, if we're starting to see Laprases run around with 230 HP, we're starting to see Lurantis even with 210 is just an awful lot for a stage 1. And I know largely that's just, another Yveltal with a Fury Belt, but Lurantis can heal as well, which is terrifying. Lurantis can one-shot an Yveltal EX, also terrifying. The Decidueye has 240 HP and potentially 1 or no energy on it. Like, sweet Jesus. The poor bird. I think we're gonna need to see it start running things like Choice Band to start keeping up. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. As for Darkrai, no, I think largely that's just going to be unchanged. Maybe Kukui slips into a few lists here and there because I feel strictly better than Giovanni, but I can't even see that happening. Nest Ball you could try out, but I feel if you're running Hoopa, Nest Ball is going to be worse. If you can get away with Hoopa, I think you should. So, I don't know. I think for the most part, yeah, like I said, they're going to seem relatively unchanged. And obviously, like, if you're running Garbodor, you don't want to run Nest Ball because then you can't get the Garbodor with it. So Ultra Ball's better. Anyway, moving on. Mega Gardevoir. Really, I can't think of anything that would go on Mega Gardevoir from the new set. The only thing I thought of was Professor Kukui, because we have seen in the past people did run Giovanni in this deck. It got cut from, like, almost every single list, if not every single list, because it wasn't good enough. But is this chance for some kind of redemption? Maybe. Like, Kukui is strictly better than Giovanni, and I just want to point this out, that because when you play Giovanni for the draw effect, you're probably only going to draw, like, 2 cards anyway. So, I feel like Kukui giving you both those aspects, I just don't see why you would run Giovanni over Kukui anymore. So maybe those decks that did have Giovanni in them before are going to look at Kukui now and be like, oh, I could get some use out of that. And I think Mega Gardevoir is one of those decks. So, yeah. There's nothing really else to say about it. There's no, like, basic Pokemon with cool abilities that can go in it that I think would fit for it. So I think that's really the only thing you'd be looking for in Mega Gardevoir. There weren't any good fairy type attackers or one energy attackers in the new set. Again, like, it's a little bit, like, it's a pretty established deck at this point. We know what it does. Maybe if Luranda's Vileplume picks up a lot of play, it's going to have to start running things like, you know, less ball search and less ability search and more things like, just go back to like a higher support account, higher engine and that kind of stuff. And just try and find a way around Luranda's like that. I don't see Luranda's being that dominant that you have to end up changing Gardevoir's build entirely. But, you know, the option is there, and it can definitely adapt if it really comes to it, basically. The other thing is, again, Nest Ball, I guess you could run it, but I would run it like on top of the 4 Ultra Ball. You cannot cut any of the Ultra Ball. And with Dragonite and with Hoopa, do you need any more than that? I think it's managing fine for those kind of resources as it is, so... Oranguru could be cool, though. You want Pokemon on your bench, you can get rid of your Shaymins and then leave one Oranguru so ends don't completely mess you up. That could be a nice idea. That's the Mega Gardevoir thoughts. But you can really say that about pretty much any deck. And that's something I've been throwing Oranguru into a lot of decks for, is just, I bench it early game, it does nothing, and then at some point I get end to 2 cards, and I've got Oranguru to help me out in those kind of situations, and it works. So I really am liking the monkey, and I think a lot of decks can sort of benefit from it in the same sort of way. Moving on, I had Mega Mewtwo listed. I couldn't think of anything other than really general stuff like I was just talking about there, so I'm going to skip over Mega Mewtwo, although I suppose Tauros GX in a sense, because it's a deck that doesn't mind getting hit for damage and then retaliating. This is sort of a different angle you can take with it. I don't really see that coming to fruition, but I guess there you go if you want to throw in something new. Volcanion. Nothing super great for Volcanion, but, guys, I have some cool information for you. It's going to blow your mind, alright? I do want to give a shout out to Keen, because he's the one who pointed this out to me. He's a friend of mine, goes to League. I don't know if he's had any battles on the channel before, but point is, he pointed this out to me. Wishy-washy, okay? So, you know when you do Volcanic Heat, and you can't attack next turn. Let's say you don't have another Volcanion powered up. You can't find Ranger. No problem. All you do is you retreat into the Wishy-washy, and then you put the Wishy-washy back in your hand. Then promote the Volcanion again, and boom, you're back to normal. And then you just rebench the Wishy-washy, and you can just loop that over and over again. That's really cool. When he first said it, we just laughed, and I was like, yeah, that's stupid. But the more I've thought about it, the better that sounds. Like, just one. I mean, obviously, with the ability lock going around, you still want to run, like, Ranger. But in addition to that, I think it's a really, really nice option. And because I've been playing an awful lot of Water Box lately, I've been practicing an awful lot with Lapras. It's going to be one of the first decks I build as soon as the new cards are available on PTCGO. I haven't tried one Wishy-washy yet. I'm absolutely going to, because the idea of being able to reset my attacks like that, I'm just so happy about that. It just sounds so cool to me. So yeah, Wishy-washy, guys. There you go. We found a use for it. It's not completely useless. And yes, the ability does read that you can still activate it from the active spot. That was the big contention before we got the English cards. We have them now. I have one. And you know what, actually? I'm going to pause my recording. I'm going to go find my pile of bulk, and I'm going to pull out the Wishy-washy and read it so that we know it works from the active. Alright, we back? Cool. Okay, I have it here. Yep. The ability is called Cowardice. And no, it has no specification that it has to be on the bench. So there you go, guys. You can use Wishy-washy and Volcanion and Lapras and anything else with a similar attack that basically says you can't attack next turn to reset that for free. Boom. I really like that idea, and I cannot wait to put it into practice. It's honestly, I don't know what the cut will be in my deck, because I think I've got a really nice list for Waterbox now. I don't think it's any different from the video I put up on it, if you're curious. I am really happy with that list, but I'm going to find room for one Wishy-washy. It has to happen, like. The other thing about Volcanion is, like, Nest Ball, if you're into that. See, I feel like it's the same thing of if you run Hoopa, you probably don't need Nest Ball, because Hoopa's just better. But not all Volcanion lists run Hoopa. The vast majority of them run Hoopa, not every single one. And if you don't run Hoopa, then Nest Ball is definitely worth your time considering. Again, Shaman still makes it really difficult to consider Nest Ball over Ultra Ball, but we've seen people try and tech in things like Dive Ball. This is strictly better. So if you were of the mindset where you wanted to try Dive Ball before, Nest Ball is now your go-to. But make room for the one Wishy-Washy. Long story short, I think it's so good. Yeah. Giratina and, well, Giratina and anything else it could possibly be partnered with, which is quite a lot of stuff because it's Giratina. And we've seen it in a bunch of different decks over the years. I don't sort of know what I could go with in this set. There's a few things that I'm kind of on the fence about. One of them's Taurus. Again, I've mentioned this a lot. It's a very splashable card because it has 3 attacks for a DCE and has a lot of HP. So, go Taurus. It's not that bad. Just for similar reasons, we've seen like Giratina run, Tina Hammers, like with Garbodor. We've seen it run things like Lugia before. Having played that deck a little bit myself, I know Lugia is probably like my favorite card in the whole deck. I was really questioned it when I was looking at lists, but once I got into it, once I started playing it myself, I was like, the Lugia is really good in this. And I honestly don't see myself switching that out for a Taurus, but if you want to, there's the option. I think it's more of like a thing that, your opponent starts getting up like these big attackers on the bench. Your Crushing Hammer slipped tails. You need some way to deal with these things. That's where the Taurus comes in, but again, if they're one-shotting you, this is a moot point. One thing that might be better is Pinsir. Yeah. So if they do come in with something that's like, built up massive Eviltal, or, massive something with just a ton of energy on it, and you want to clear it, Pinsir is an option for you. You can, do that, I guess. If you forgot, Pinsir is flip a coin if heads, return the attack active Pokemon and all cards attached to it to your opponent's hand. So if you've got an Eviltal with 20 energy on it, gonna have to, manually attach all those again. And that's the Pinsir. So it's nice at just clearing threats and sort of making your opponent work a bit harder. And slowing them down, which is, the aim of the game with Giratina. The other thing that's been in a lot of my disruption decks so far, and one thing, honestly, straight up, my favorite card from the new set, Gumshoos GX. I love this thing so much. Just from playing it in Houndoom. You never make misplays. It's hilarious. There's no way you can make a misplay when you know exactly what is in your opponent's hand. You look at your own hand and be like, I could N, or I could Team Skullgrunt. And then let's look at your hand. Let's find out which one of these options was correct. It's brilliant. It's really brilliant. It's so simple, but so effective. And the same kind of principle applies here. I think it works in any disruption deck, if that sense. And also Gumshoe Chance GX. If they do come in with something with like 4 or 5 energy on it, it's gone. It's just dead. That's how the attack works. So, yeah, no, I could see that absolutely fitting in. Is a 1-1 or a 2-1 line. No, in Houndoom, it's been putting in so much work for me, and I could see it putting in work in any disruption deck, like Wailord, but like Tina, because that's more likely to see play than Wailord. So there you go. And honestly, just shameless plug for Gumshoos GX. Guys, if you have not tried it, please do. It's so unbelievably good. Anyway, that was the wrong tab I just opened. Here we go. Next up, we're going to go for Greninja. We'll save the other stuff for last there. Let's go for Greninja. Not a whole lot of things that I can think of that I'd be super keen to include in Frogs. The only thing that I've seen that's been like majorly theorized is a Alolan Muck. So this is something I've thought about a little bit as well. Concept being that you obviously, don't want to play Garbodor and Greninja because that you'd be the stupidest person of all time. But you want to play, I don't know, maybe run it with like Klefkis or Bursting Balloons or something like that, so they deactivate going back to your turn. But look, if you want some kind of ability lock with Greninja, but you obviously don't want to play Garbodor, Hexmaniac is a little bit because you have Shadow Stitching. But I don't know, maybe you want a bit more flexibility. We've seen Greninja players switching to Silent Lab. And this is essentially, the idea is essentially that a 1-1 Alolan Muck line could be Silent Lab, but for, like, just as a bench sitter. It's not like the stadium. So you can still play Rough Siege, you can still play Faded Town. And I think looking at the Megas doing well at the moment, Frogs might want to hit back to Faded Town. And if they still want to keep that ability lock going, there's your Muck. It means you need to run Float Stones. You probably need to start Talonflame so you can search it out of the deck. It means that you're probably going to have to be limited to 3 Froakie, 4 Talonflame, 1 Grimer. and from there you can't run things like Jirachi or Beedrill or any other techs you want. So it's a bit of commitment, but it's an idea. And that's all it is for now. I don't think it's going to see any play. I think we're just going to see Frogs continue as it has been. But if any major change is going to come to Frogs from this new set, I think it's going to be that. The other thing I was thinking was Rotom decks. I think one of the issues with Rotom decks is that if you look through your first search of the game, you're flicking through your deck and you're like, oh, my amazing one-off tech is prized. How do I get it out of there? Rotom decks is usually your answer. My big issue with that is normally it's like, well, if I have an amazing one-off tech, why would I want to run that when I could just run like 2 copies of the amazing tech and cut the Rotom decks all together? Surely that will be way better. And also, I don't want to have to dig through my deck to find a Rotom dex to then have to dig through my deck again to find the thing I just shuffled in, or potentially didn't shuffle in. So no, I don't like Rotom decks in general. But in Frogs, you're screwed if you prize like 2 Frogadier. And you can't run a 5th Frogadier. Thankfully, that would be hell. And you can also Aero Blitz out the Rotom decks. So, if you go for an Aero Blitz, and you realize, oh no, like I've got an awful lot of Frogs prized. I want to fix that. Let's just search out my 1 copy of Rotom decks, shuffle them all back in. Or, ideally, shuffle them all back in. So, I don't know. I think that's a nice one-off card that we could start seeing in the deck. And I think it's one of the very, very few decks where Rotom decks actually works. Play around with it yourselves, basically. Finally, I'm going to group a lot of decks together here to talk about basic Pokemon with DCE attack costs. This includes Passimian, Skarmory, Pinsir, and a few other things that I'm going to go through. Basically, I'm going to group, like, Mega Ray can use all these things. The theory with Mega Ray there being is, like, Pinsir and Skarmory, obviously, like, try them out. I don't think they're going to be very good. Passimian's an interesting one because you can run 4 of them. It'll fuel your attacks for the Rayquaza. And also, Rayquaza is weak to lightning. If there was a big lightning attacker, Passimian is a fighting type. You hit that for weakness. This is a very generic way of looking at Pokemon and looking at the meta, but it's an option. If Raikou Electrode becomes ridiculously good for some reason, maybe this will be an answer to it. I don't know. But the point is that you probably could do it if you wanted to, and it would be viable. Raichu Bats is sort of the same thing. One form of Raichu Bats I've been playing around with is where you cut all of the bats. You put in like a 4 Passimian, 4 Puzzle at a time, and 1 Kukui. That way you can still hit 180 with the Kukui, and you've also got this Passimian attacker who Mew can copy instead of Raichu. If you get Parallel City, that's not the end of the world. It also means that if you go first and you start Passimian, you can get some early damage off. It means you can hit into things like Darkrai and hit them for weakness, which is becoming more relevant, and is also something Raichu isn't great at dealing with, in my opinion. So there you go. That's another option for you too. But the flexibility of the Golbat is super nice as well. Vespiquen, again, gets all of these benefits as well. I'm not sure Vespiquen Passimian is my kind of thing because it's not as suited. Like, Mega Ray and Raichu are both decks that want to get a lot of Pokemon on the bench, so they're suited to that kind of format of a deck. Vespiquen isn't necessarily the only thing you really want to be getting on the benches. A lot of the time are just other Vespiquens, Zebstrikas, Shaymans. It's not always going to be, I need 4 Passimian right now. Like, I don't think Quen is a deck that is capable of doing that, especially because you'd have to run things like you can't level ball for it if you're running level ball. I know most lists aren't, they're running Acrobike instead, but it's like, I don't think it can get away with it as much as these other decks. That's the point I'm trying to make. But I guess it's an option. Rainbow Road, however, can. Not with the 4 Passimian, actually, that's a terrible idea. Don't do that. But Rainbow Road can fit in a few of these really well. I think Skarmory, not my favorite option in Rainbow Road because you already have a great metal type in what's-his-face? Genesect EX. That's a really great card in that deck. And honestly, if you're not playing Genesect in Rainbow Road, my opinion of you has lowered. It's such a great card in that deck. So you've got that, so I don't think I'd be running Skarmory in it. But Pinsir's not a bad option for Rainbow Road, because if you're sort of steering away from the Galvantula variant, if you don't like that, there you go. You got a nice grass type to go with a DCE attack cost. It's a nice option for it. People are talking, or like not a lot, but I've seen a few people mention maybe Alolan Raticate in Rainbow Road. It could work. I just think, again, it's an awful lot of setup for a card with a stupid high retreat cost. And yeah, true, you are struggling for great dark types in Rainbow Road, but I feel like I'd rather just Hoopa for an Umbreon, honestly. And then just this, what is it called? What's the first attack on Umbreon called? I love that attack. The one that lets you discard cards from your hand and then draw them. Draw more from your deck. Just use that instead, okay? It's a consistency booster. It's a dark type. You can search it out with Hoopa. It's a basic. It's way better. Nest Ball is another option. Again, I'd be running it in addition to Ultra Balls to try and help fill my bench. I don't know. I think Rainbow Road's a safe enough play going into sort of an unknown meta. I don't think there's anything outwardly against it. Like, not everyone's playing Scizor or anything crazy like that. I don't know. I think Rainbow Road could be a nice safe enough pick going into it. It really sort of, in my opinion, it should destroy Volcanion. I think it's an easy matchup for Rainbow Road to win that, especially if they're not running Fury Belts, which some of them aren't. And even if they are, you're hitting big enough numbers. We're seeing less parallel. Maybe that'll increase because Ray is seeing more play. We're just not seeing a lot of decks that are able to deal with it very well. And now that we've got that new Giratina promo, I don't know, maybe you could chuck that in as well to try and help improve your Greninja matchup. But of course, they're all running Silent Lab, so this is all off the top of the head stuff. But I think Rainbow Road's a nice safe play at the moment. If you put in enough practice with it and you sort of circumvent a lot of the deck's inherent consistency issues, you may have a good time at early tournaments in the season. So that's my thoughts on it so far. Oh, and that was an awful lot of talking about decks, which is, you know, the whole point of this podcast. But yeah, I haven't done a podcast like properly sat down and done one in ages where I wasn't with a guest or where I wasn't filming in front of a screen, where this is where like I'm reading directly off of notes. So it was nice to get back into the flow of it. And I do appreciate all the comments and likes and stuff that have been left on the videos lately. I've had some time off work, so I've been able to put in a lot more work into the channel. I do hope to continue it on in the future. So yeah, that is going to do it for this week's Woopercast. If I did miss anything, or if your favorite deck didn't get mentioned, or if you thought of a cool card to put in a deck that I didn't think of, absolutely let me know. I would like to continue the discussion in the comments, of course, as if you have any questions as well. So, yeah, facebook.com/Woopercast, soundcloud.com/Woopercast. Tune in and Stitcher as well. Again, like I said, apologies for the delay on getting the episodes up there. By the time you hear this, they should all be up there, present and correct. So, and we'll be back to normal as well. Yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. As always, it has been Joe from Woopercast, and I will see you next time.